So we've got a lot to cover today, Liz. So I think that we should jump right into our educational content and introduce our good friends Stephen and Hannah and dive right in because I'm super excited about today's episode. I think that there's a lot of interest about importing, automating the import of point of sale, e-commerce into QuickBooks correctly, right? Because there's lots and lots of apps out there that'll do it, but very few that'll actually do it the way that we accountants want. So when we find one that's going to do it the way that we would like it to be done, we get kind of excited about that. So Liz, you're driving today. So you want to take that away?
I would love to. Yep.
Fantastic.
So I agree with you. It's refreshing. In fact, so anybody who's got a client who's in Clover, this is a really good solution for you. What happened is I myself had a client who was inside Clover, and I had my own unique needs, and I was lucky enough to be able to get some great, amazing support, and that connection with Stefan was just amazing, and his knowledge is so vast. I'm going to share some of that later because he is not just sales. He's so much more. So he completely, every single time that we talk, he blows me away with his knowledge. So I'm very, very thankful that you're joining us, and really thankful to be able to share something exciting that's happening in our accounting world. So importing Clover sales into QuickBooks Online, and I'll just go ahead and add QuickBooks Desktop as well. So if you are somebody who is also using QuickBooks Desktop, this will also work for QuickBooks Desktop, slightly different, but you kind of get the gist of what we'll go through. There's a slight variation, but we are thankful to our sponsor today, Commerce Inc.
And this is Stephen. Thank you, Liz and Heather. And for the record, I can't hold a candle to either of you, but little video podcast dressing arms race. So thank you.
Well, we had to definitely step it up. So my name is Liz Scott, and many of you here already know me, so I'll keep it brief. I have an accounting firm in Oklahoma, and what we focus on is QuickBooks needs for businesses, and then any type of integration that they need with that. And I focus on e-commerce businesses, so once you find your jive, you stick with it. And I love that area. That's kind of a fun niche that's always changing. I love a puzzle, love a problem. And it's fun to be able to go, ha-ha, solved it. So this is going to be one of those that if you've got Clover sales, you're going to be walking around like, I just put something in my pocket and I'm walking away smarter today. Heather, how about you?
Well, I do what you do, right? I have Saturday Training Consulting where I help small businesses and accountants integrate applications, usually with QuickBooks. And I'm like you, I like to pick apart a problem, make it easy, streamline it so that people spend as little time as possible doing manual data entry into their computer. So that's kind of my thing. One of my favorite things, apps that I work with is Zapier. So I teach lots of accounting professionals and others about how to use Zapier to connect different applications that they use. And then I also have a firm called Back Office Ally where I put on my tax and accounting hat and help small businesses with their bookkeeping and tax needs. So staying pretty busy with that. And then non-work related, I have 4 kids and 3 grandkids. Anybody know that about me? I have a lot of kids in my life. So all the way from 29 down to the youngest is about 1.5 years. So I miss them like crazy right now because I can't see my little grandchildren. Although 2 of my other children are home, which is really nice to have them around. So that's me.
Lots of family time, game time. And would you like to share a little bit about what's going on? So who you are and what you do.
Thanks a lot, Liz, for the intro. So I'm VP of Product and Growth at Commerce Inc. And it encompasses both product and a number of kind of customer-facing tasks and roles, such as this one being here with Liz and Heather today. And I think one thing that is maybe important to point out for the arc of this entire kind of presentation is that we've been with Clover from the beginning. And I've been with Clover. I've been with CommerceInc and Clover from the beginning. We were the fourth app, I think, that was published in the ecosystem back in 2014. So we've definitely made a lot of improvements and earned a lot of trust going from the first customer to what's now the 10,000th customer in market over the past 5 years. So really look forward to being here today with everyone.
Wow, I did not realize that. That's fantastic. I knew that you were super knowledgeable, and I just didn't realize how far back the connection went. So we're thankful to also our Champagne sponsor, Right Networks. And many of us already are using Right Networks to host our desktop clients, so that way we can collaborate with them. And we also have a special connection here too, because CommerceInc also works with desktop. You can also host your CommerceInc inside of Right Networks if you've got Clover clients who need to import those sales.
That's right. Since we started working directly with QuickBooks Desktop back in 2015, we soon thereafter partnered with Right Networks. We're featured as a desktop, remote host on desktop.apps.com. And so while we're here to focus on QuickBooks Online today, everything holds true for QuickBooks Desktop as well. So we really appreciate the partnership with Right Networks.
Fantastic. Yeah, and we are really thankful of our partnership with them as well. And we have some special news at the end of today's broadcast regarding Right Networks that we're excited to share with everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And today we're going to have a special toast, and it's beautiful. So I can't wait to share that later. But we're going to be talking about importing our Clover sales into QuickBooks Online. And that's where we're going to go ahead and get started. And so, the whole reason to need these types of solutions is we've got clients that are not using QuickBooks to record their sales. There's lots of reasons as to why, and it's appropriate for them to do so. And so they've got either brick and mortar stores and they're ringing up things through a register. They've got lots of goods that need to be scanned, barcoded. They're medical professional, they're lawyers, they're restaurants. So whatever the reason is, all of those different types of businesses have their sales outside of QuickBooks, and we've got to get a way to pull all those sales transactions in and do it in a way that will reconcile. And so any clearing accounts, any bank accounts, any sales tax, those are the things that we want to keep neat and tidy. And so anytime that we can use a tool that we know is going to be able to make everything kind of stay in its lane, that makes us really happy. So that's what we're going to be sharing. And whenever we're talking about these point of sale systems, most of us here are very familiar with this term, the POS. But I thought it'd be kind of worth it for some of you who are just joining us who maybe say, all right, we're talking about using Clover, not really sure about Clover. What exactly are you doing there with the point of sale system? So this is just when your register is your sales solution. It's just you're going over and you're ringing out your goods, and it's, a lot of times it's got your merchant provider hosted inside there. So you're going to be able to, with this is the life cycle of your order, you would go over into your point of sale system, record that transaction, calculate your sales tax for you, and then you're going to have your merchant services. Sometimes your merchant service is going to sit inside of your point of sale, and sometimes it's going to be a separate solution. Thankfully, we've now got to an age where most of those are now together. They're synced together, but every once in a while you run into a scenario where they're not. So then you also have these connector apps. So how are you going to get your point of sale with your merchant services into QuickBooks? And so that's what makes today's conversation so relevant. So how do we get our Clover point of sales into QuickBooks? And the things that we want is we want it to be able to have our customer information, so our sales detail attached with our customer payment, along with inventory. So Clover can, or you can opt not to have inventory, and then also your sales tax calculated. So all of these things are happening inside of your point of sales system, and this is happening in Clover. And so I want to make sure that I'm pointing out that right now what we're focused on is we're focused on the Clover part of this conversation, because that's where the sales are happening. That's where the actual transaction with the customer is happening. And then next, we're going to have to worry about getting that into QuickBooks. But right now, our focus is on Clover.
Right. And I mean, this is really a great example of how we're seeing with the QuickBooks Online ecosystem that, you know, most, I wouldn't say, well, I would say most actually, most of the clients that I work with have some kind of third-party app that manages their accounts receivable and their sales processes in their firm. So they're using something like Clover, or they're using an industry-specific app to handle the sales function, invoicing, sales receipts, sales tax, things like that. And then they need to push that data into QuickBooks to create the financial statements, and, you know, really the financial information to do compliance reporting for income taxes. So we're right here where we're talking about taking that point of sale outside of QuickBooks into another solution. And then we're going to focus in just a little bit on how to get that information into QuickBooks correctly, the way we like.
Yes. And so the type of businesses that we see using Clover are those brick and mortar stores. They're those restaurants, anybody who's using a point of sale system. There are some Clover web stores that are available, and then you can take your Clover payments. So we were talking about that sometimes there's Clover payments, or there's payments that exist outside of your point of sale system, but Clover, we know that it can integrate and pull in those payments. And then also we have the Clover mobile stations. So if you've got somebody who from time to time maybe goes to road shows and they need to be able to sell their goods, or I have a client who their scenario is they've got home parties. And so they need to be able to, every once in a while, be able to swipe a card for sales that happen at these home parties. That's not a normal thing that they do, but every once in a while they have this need. And so you've got this ability to be very flexible with the Clover system on how you use it. So you can have two of these. You can have a brick and mortar store, which is very common for some of my clients. And then also they might have some of this mobile action going on too. But we definitely like it whenever, you know, Clover's seeing those payments happen. You have anything that you want to add there?
No, that was perfect, Liz. Thanks.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to move over into the features. And so the reason that I like Clover and the reason that I recommend Clover to my clients is that it's easy. It's one of those solutions that's very fast for the customer experience. So whenever you go to check out with QuickBooks, we know that that's not really a fast sales tool. It's okay whenever you don't have a ton of customers lining up and you're not doing anything with barcode scanning. But if you've got some type of sales scenario where you need to be able to move people in quickly, or maybe you have trainees coming in and you need a very easy solution, that's whenever you're going to use something like a third-party solution, point of sale like Clover, to be able to check those people out, move them on, collect their payments, make sure you got the sales tax calculated, and then out they go. Clover can also do the employee time tracking. They've got the gift card tracking that they can do as well, because that's kind of a normal thing. And then also the customer and product reporting. And so this is one of those things that a lot of times my clients get a little bit confused on. They're like, well, but if I'm in Clover and my sales are happening over here, and then I've got QuickBooks happening over here, well, would I use QuickBooks in order to like open that up for my marketing? It's like, no, you've got what you sold and who you sold it to happening over inside of your point of sale system. So keep it there. That's where we want to keep that heavy detail. We want to keep our QuickBooks as our accounting platform and keep it very clean and tidy. And so this is the stations, so Clover stations, what that would look like. And this is where I was talking about you have some different options. That traditional brick and mortar store, they're going to need the larger checkout. So you would go with something like the Pro. And again, you've got, I mean, we've all seen these. You go up there and you see the little buttons and they click the little images. Very fast, super easy. So that's going to be the nice thing, to be able to also have the printout of the receipt. And then the Flex allows you to go and do payments on the go. So those activity that I was talking about that happens sometimes at road shows, that would be it. And then you've got a smaller station and then your mini. And then this was to be if you just needed to collect payment. So kind of like our little swipes that we can attach to our phones and whatnot.
Liz, I have a question. So
Yes.
you mentioned that you keep your customers in Clover, you let it handle that side of your business. And I'm assuming Clover, I haven't used Clover personally. I'm assuming that Clover has the ability to do some kind of customer contact management too, right? Where you can send out emails or things like that? Or does it just connect with other third-party systems that would handle that?
They would connect with other things. So MailChimp, some of those other things, you would connect with it because that's where you're going to do your marketing. So you would be able to export some of that data. And now if you were going to do any type of heavy campaigning, I just don't think that Clover would be the place that you would want to do a lot of that. And honestly, they might have some of that available, but I think that you would export that data, and they've got integrations with things like MailChimp.
Got it. Yeah, I can see that. Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So how do you get all of this into QuickBooks? So we know that the sales tax happened, and we know the customer payment and the inventory. If you've got a scenario where you have inventory, I'm so sorry. But, you've got these things that are happening. So how do you get it in there? We want to, in most scenarios, we want to be able to say, our sales solutions are doing a really good job of calculating sales tax. So all we need is just a tool to push that data into QuickBooks. We don't need QuickBooks to then calculate sales tax again, thank you. So what we want is just a really clean scenario where we've got our Clover sales happening. And this is where we introduce the Commerce Sync. So that way we can say, we've got our Clover doing its job. It's acting as our point of sale solution, making those fast transactions at the terminal. And then now we've got our data that we want to export and push it into QuickBooks. And then right here, this is where we've got some options. And this is the flexibility that you have. Now we have kind of some preferences, but we have flexibility. And so it's nice to know whenever you're importing into QuickBooks, you've got the individual sales transaction option, and then you've also got the sales summary option. And either way you go, the idea is to get that data into QuickBooks. And so whenever you're looking, when you're looking at your individual sales transaction, this is your traditional method, right? So this is what we used to see happening all the time. Or maybe you've got a customer who truly does need to push in those inventory items on the individual level, but this is a lot of detail. This is great for tracking inventory, but this is hard to reconcile. And the reason that it's hard to reconcile is you've got every single one of those payments that's going to have to be mapped to a clearing account, and you or somebody is going to have to manage that and make sure that every single one of those transactions that equal the batch that actually hits the bank account is cleared. So, it's a lot to manage here. You can do it if you've got the manpower to manage these individual transactions that can be imported in. But another option, and this is really my most preferred option, is being able to import the sales summary. So these daily sales summaries, this means that you have less transactions that's inside of QuickBooks Online, less clutter, and less opportunity for error. Because remember, we've got Clover that's going to be able to handle all of that heavy detail. What you sold and who you sold it to is happening over here. And you can even see right there, it might be a little bit small, but I'll tell you what it says is this is a Clover customer. It's generic going into QuickBooks. You don't need every single customer name. That would get really, really muddy and convoluted very quickly. There's no need for it. So instead, what did you sell? And then, the opportunity for errors is greatly reduced. You don't have so many transactions. You go to pull a report and look at the detail. You don't have hundreds and hundreds of rows and you're waiting for. So that's really nice. And then the best part is you've got the easier to reconcile. So if you say on one day's worth of transactions, you expected to have X amount of dollars in cash and in card, you can see you've got your breakdown here. This is just really kind of a highlight. We're going to have a deep dive into this in a demo in a minute, but you know, just sharing what our preferences are. This is a lot of times the thing that we want to see. It's easiest for us to manage. And I know that you were saying that this is kind of where you see the majority of accountants asking for this daily summary.
Absolutely. You know, this is something that we were in market with almost from the get-go, just kind of maybe a little bit of foresight and a little bit of luck. But it ends up being easier for the bulk of, like, Clover is based upon small business. QuickBooks is based upon serving small business. So from an 80-20 rule type of perspective, the percentage is actually greater for those who prefer the daily summary. And we'll have a moment to get into that in greater detail.
Yeah, whenever I saw this, of course, I was really, really excited. So, and here's the reason why. This is it. It's freedom from headaches. Those clearing accounts are just a big, big pain. And so, you know, what we often see, especially with e-commerce clients, is, and it's not just e-commerce clients, but really it's anytime that you've got a client who has bank feeds and any other way to import sales transactions, they do the double importing. And so if you've got a clearing account and it doesn't match your bank feeds, what can happen is they've duplicated their sales. And they don't, of course, do it on purpose, but it happens. And so anytime that you can have these really nice clean matches, it makes it where it's faster to work through that client's data and it's way more accurate. And whenever I see that match, it's kind of like you did it. And it's like this checks and balances thing to be able to go confirmation of it worked. So I love being able to see the bank feed matches. You know, anytime that I'm doing the clearing account or using a system that doesn't have a good importing tool, you know, sometimes you're missing those fees, and that's really hard to go back and search for those. Shopify, Amazon are both really good examples of where it's really hard to go in and find your fees. And so you have to kind of go fish for those unless you've got a really good exporting tool to be able to get that out. And so A2X is a really good solution for both Amazon and Shopify. But these daily sales, they help you to be able to manage those multi-forms of payments. And you may still have some clearing accounts, but it's going to definitely greatly reduce the amount of clearing accounts that you have. And you may actually even alleviate that need for them. So with that all being said, I'm super glad that you're here. And Heather, unless you've got something more that you want to add to that, I'm going to raise a toast.
No, I think you did a fantastic job. Thank you.
Okay, well then I'm going to say, here, it's time for a drink.
Here.
Here's to making accountants' lives easier.
Oh, we're all for that. We need that, especially, you know.
Easier.
Yes, anytime. And this drink has got some history to it.
Yeah?
It does. Did you want to turn the presenter rights over to me or stop presenting and then I'll share?
I would love to. Yeah, let me come over here and I will stop sharing so that way you can jump on in there.
Okay, again, here.
I'll drink again.
Me too. It's delicious.
In these times, I can't think of anything better than to have a cocktail and talk accounting with two women as accomplished as Liz and Heather. So really appreciate the audience here today.
Well, just absolutely thankful to have you here. And I want to tell everybody that's joining us that it's a true treat to have you joining us because
It really
you
is.
really are so knowledgeable. Every single time I'm troubleshooting an issue as you're getting ready, you know, your accounting knowledge, your QuickBooks knowledge, your Commerce Sync knowledge, your Clover knowledge, you've really studied. So it's very impressive.
Well, much appreciated. Again, really happy to be here today. By way of prelude, the Clover Club cocktail has a very venerable history. It actually predates Prohibition. I had the opportunity to see Liz speak for the first time at QuickBooks Connect last year, and then had the opportunity to meet her again. And there was an interest in talking about how we can help accountants work with Clover merchants in the context of QuickBooks. And so the best drink I could find to kind of honor this opportunity, as well as our partnership with Clover, is the pre-Prohibition Clover Club cocktail. And so I'm not going to read through the entire deck verbatim. This will all be available for everyone afterwards in an evergreen fashion. I'll try to hit the highlights for everyone here and then do a little bit of deep dive with some of the QuickBooks screens that you see waiting for us up here. One thing I do want to point out here, though, is a key differentiator, in addition to some of the features that we'll talk about, is our customer experience. It's very rare to be in touch with folks who are experts in both payments and accounting. Usually someone is an expert in one, but not the other. And so that's one thing that takes CommerceSync offering a cut above some others, to the point where that's why after nearly 5 years of partnership, more than 5 years of partnership, you'll find us. It's very easy to find us. If you go to clover.com/appmarket, we are among the blessed few who are in the slider at the top. And so it's been a long journey in terms of earning the trust of the entire ecosystem, merchants, Clover sales reps, and accountants, bookkeepers alike, which is part of why we're very happy to be talking with you all today.
Okay, and we're getting asked a question if you could maximize your screen, because...
Sure.
Perfect, thank you.
And then so one quick slide by way of prelude to talk about why it is that you care. You care obviously about some of the things that, many of the things that Liz has talked about in terms of being able to operate efficiently and being able to get things from Clover into QuickBooks in a way that doesn't end up making a mess of the QuickBooks account. There's a little bit more here that we can talk about, however, some of our favorite merchants that are very valuable for the entire ecosystem. And one that we like to point out is one of our largest Clover merchants, Pioneer Woman, who I believe is right in Liz's backyard. I'm not sure if just being in Oklahoma counts as being in Liz's backyard. But what that underscores is the capacity for our kind of roll-up aggregation technology that Liz highlighted earlier to be able to support a number of merchants, whether you're just getting started out to if you have a television show. And before we get into the good stuff, one thing that I wanted to mention on top of Liz talking about all of the devices is that CommerceSync works on all of the devices. There's a little bit of technical underpinning underneath, but no matter what merchant services plan the merchant happens to be on, or what device or devices they happen to be using, CommerceSync will work for them. So that's a question that you might get early on in the conversation, like, hey, does this work with Clover Flex? Or, hey, I'm working with this restaurant that has a station and 5 Clover Flexes. All you need to know is the answer is always yes. And then you can turn things over to our customer experience team to go through the more detailed aspects of setup to ensure the reporting is correct. So here for the deck is kind of a summary of our top-notch features for CommerceSync for Clover. There are 3 that I want to highlight most today. First is just how easy activation is. Most merchants just want to get things working, and they want to get things working very efficiently. And so we take a lot of the burden up front, oftentimes creating placeholders in the chart of accounts or other entities within QuickBooks. Like Liz highlighted, the generic Clover customer for when you want to roll up an entire coffee shop's worth of sales for a given day, month, year. Do that all for the customer so that they can get to actually using CommerceSync as well as getting back to running their business. Instead of enforcing the heavy duty setup up front, we enable those controls afterwards. So if you have a large merchant, if you have 47 locations, or if you're just very inquisitive, you have all of those controls for you. So we want to make it easy for those whose needs are just that, without sacrificing the complexity for those whose businesses require that level of integration and configuration. One other thing that's a key differentiator is the concept of the daily sales summary. And so instead of kind of staring at the deck here, we'll actually get into QuickBooks proper. Have to minimize a little bit. There we go. So once I'm active, how does CommerceSync actually work? By default, at 3 a.m. local to the business, whatever the business happens to do and wherever the business happens to be located, we go knocking on Clover's door and we say, hey, what's everything that happened midnight to midnight yesterday? The magic all happens automatically overnight. We take in all the information, roll it up based upon defaults and any custom configuration that's been done, and then put it into QuickBooks. And what you see here is a little bit of the added value. Whereas you might not necessarily get the same level of detail as individual transactions with explicit line item detail mapped to SKUs, what you get here is a tremendous value for something that takes as little as 2 minutes to set up. One of our most popular features is something called sales by category. What this does is it looks at Clover and you have your inventory there and you can put categories and labels on it. If this is something you choose during activation because it's relevant to your business, you want to divide up income by different lines, then we automatically map that into the chart of accounts through the item mapping as those who are familiar with QuickBooks are familiar with. So you don't have to do this double configuration between Clover and your categories there or your revenue tracking labels. We'll automatically put that into QuickBooks. But if you have an existing chart of accounts, we can work with you to make sure that mapping works correctly. And oftentimes when merchants feel like they need the line item detail, the sales by category ends up being perfectly sufficient and they don't have to do any extra work. There's also additional greatness to be seen just on this screen. Simpler things like recording tips as a liability comes without any additional configuration. What can get a little bit more complex is the mapping in of sales tax. It can be as simple as I'm one location, I take one rate, and we can just put it into QuickBooks, and that's great. Without getting into all of the detail here, because I want to show some even more interesting things, we support things like the point of sale recording tax differently than expected, if it's like alcohol and tobacco, or if you have a combined rate, mapping especially to that. Not necessarily relevant to QuickBooks Online, but relevant to QuickBooks Desktop, we can do multiple rates.
One thing here that I'd like to point out too is the type of transaction that this is. You're importing an invoice.
That's a great question. It goes back to some of the fundamentals of how QuickBooks works. It wasn't built from the start at least, for rolling up brick and mortar kind of point of sales. It wasn't built for supporting coffee shops. It was built for by Scott Cook and his wife, as I understand, to be able to collect from merchants. And so the concept of a split payment, even something as simple as like a restaurant where four people are sharing the tab, doesn't work within a sales construct. Now, if you take all of the sales and all of the tender types across a day, we're basically using the invoice mechanic and applying each tender type in a rolled up fashion to the invoice. And that's a great dovetail into one of the next tabs that I want to jump into. Before we get to that, I think I accidentally, but like serendipitously saw a good question come through if someone closes after midnight. We've been in market with Clover for over 5 years. And one of the things we did last year was actually just overhaul our integration. 5 years worth of learnings and growing together. This isn't a dumb pipe, set it and forget it. We are continually evolving the product and our customer support processes to best serve everyone in the ecosystem. One of the things that we've added along the way is the ability to support businesses that have a closing time that isn't midnight to midnight. QuickBooks doesn't really have the concept of hours, it's just day by day. And so restaurants and bars are often going to have what I've called a different fiscal day. Maybe it's 2 a.m. to 2 a.m., New York City, 4 a.m. to 4 a.m. And our support for that is a great dovetail into the next and third of the key differentiators, which is the ease of reconciliation. So what we've shown here is we have 3 different tender types taken this day on this Clover station by this particular Clover merchant. What I'll jump over into is the checking register in the chart of accounts. What we see here was something mapped not to undeposited funds, but directly into the relevant bank account for all of the credit card sales that occurred that day. Now, this is a very interesting point about working with Clover. It's not just germane to Clover, but everyone that works in payments. There's a difference between credit card transactions and debit card transactions. As simple as like how much your discount rate is. And so from a payments perspective, it's very, very important that you're treated appropriately. However, the manner in which Clover does the settlement transfers all the credit and debit together at once. So following suit, we roll that all up at once by default, no extra work for the bookkeeper, the merchant, or anyone. And so when you have a bank feed set up, it ends up looking like this, where what Clover is reporting with a little bit of additional magic matches what comes over in the bank feed here. You don't have to go through 500 transactions to figure out, everything that's there. Matched and we're done. And so that's the magic that we're looking for in trying to make folks like Liz happy. And then furthermore.
Wait, if there had been drum roll, I would have done that, but I was answering a question. And I missed my moment.
Appreciate that and appreciate the full-on team effort here.
Because that's the part that makes us go, oh, it works.
Let's take it a step further from that moment of sunshine into taking it into the question about like, do we support after midnight? And what we found is that for businesses that close after midnight, their settlement is coming over, from a different amount than if you do midnight to midnight. So we adopted that feature accordingly. It can be a little odd. Time zone math is a little bit, can be interesting at times, but the point is that it works and it works well and it works for you. Are there any pertinent questions to answer after I can answer after we went through that, because I wanted to go through one more example that has a good kind of, is well timed.
You know, I would say go ahead and keep going. One of the questions that I'll just go ahead and say out loud because it was in chat was, while you're getting staged, was that the question was all about grouping credit cards together, or do you separate them out? And so my advice was that for them to schedule some time with you or with support, because I've had that unique situation myself, and there's some flexibility there.
There is actually a tremendous amount of flexibility the way that Clover supports tender types. So by default, every credit and debit are treated differently, but you can go in and use Clover in a more discrete way if you so choose. And we would support that through the mapping. Great question.
I just wanted to mention, Stephen, and maybe you were going to mention this later, so hopefully I'm not jumping the gun, but CommerceSync works with Square. It works with other systems as well, giving the same type of functionality, right? So it's not just Clover. We're focusing on Clover for this episode, but there's a wide, you guys have other options as well.
We do have other options. I'll jump the gun a little bit over here and say we support, those are our main partners. So we actually have a blend of both what would be considered point of sale brick and mortar card present and also e-commerce card not present. And those can often be complementary, as well as there are some differences. For example, customer detail is more important for e-commerce than it happens to be for brick and mortar. There's overlap when you get to service-based businesses, but the specific needs for a coffee shop versus someone who's taking online donations are a little bit further apart from an accounting perspective and other perspectives as well. Great question, though. Thank you. And so we mentioned that we have all of our tender types rolled up. And one of them that we've done for a while is just the ability to segregate all of your delivery services by tender type. And that's obviously something that's become important and is becoming more important. And we want to do whatever we can to help businesses and their bookkeepers operate more efficiently. And so one thing that we've devised recently is an easier way to report on your delivery service sales. What we have over here is an example. Whoops. By using Clover Customer in a certain type of fashion, we could report from an income perspective everything that came in on every delivery service, not just the asset and undeposited funds perspective. So then this would appear separately within the chart of accounts and without necessarily breaking the reconciliation. In fact, making it easier because the way that you reconcile delivery services is going to be on a week-by-week basis, not on a day-by-day basis. So the more that we can kind of isolate that within the chart of accounts, the easier that process is going to be. So that's it for the deep dive. Again, this deck will be available for everyone in addition to our customer experience team and a lot of other content. But I really appreciated the ability to go through that with everyone. Now, as we mentioned, starting with Right Networks at the beginning of this, everything that we talk about in terms of QuickBooks Online is at feature par with QuickBooks Desktop. We partnered, I don't know how many in the audience remember this piece of technology called Intuit Sync Manager. At that time, we ended up partnering with Intuit, maybe again, luck and foresight, to provide a replacement that, Intuit Sync Manager was pretty general purpose, whereas we came up with something, in that spirit, but targeted more towards, hey, getting my Clover information transferred across. So every single feature that I just mentioned applies equally to QuickBooks Desktop. We've made the activation process as easy as possible, knowing that you still have to be able to access the company file, sometimes on a remote server, as with Right Networks, hence our partnership with them. And then the added bonus of things like multiple tax rates that don't exist on QBO. QuickBooks Enterprise class trapping, tapping into that, things of that nature. One additional feature that I think, or at least hope, accountants and bookkeepers appreciate. When we started out this entire adventure with Clover, we started out with a kind of do no harm type of policy, knowing that it's much worse to enter information incorrectly than it is to have never done it at all. And so occasionally we'd run into examples like this. If you look at this receipt, it's saying, hey, I sold $57.64 worth of stuff, inclusive of my tax liability there. But I actually only took $44.59. So what happened there? Honest mistake, who knows? Point being, it doesn't balance, but instead of throwing out the entire bushel of apples because there was one bad one, what we do is we enter an offsetting line here mapped to a specific suspense account. So we don't sacrifice everything that's good about our automated transfer and its accuracy, while still making it easier to report on these discrepancies by simply going into the suspense account and running a report and figuring out how to reconcile that.
That's a lot of really good detail. So I think that I see the teaser on the next slide, which is exactly where I think everybody's going, yes, take us there. Here we are. And we want to get the poll up too. So walk us through our pricing and then we'll get the poll up.
Sure, 2 basic pricing plans, and it's mostly the difference between QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop. $19.95 per month per location, and then $39 per month per location. First and foremost, these both include unlimited sales and unlimited customer support. So we don't punish you for growing your business or having lots of locations. All of the billing occurs from within the Clover app market. So it's pretty easy in that app store model regard. One thing I do want to add, 2 things I'd like to add. We offer historical sales transfer, like unlimited. So if you have someone who's been using Clover and for some reason hasn't been using CommerceSync since 2014, and they want to sign up and get 5 years worth of historical transfer tomorrow, we can do that. We will work with you on that one. I think an example that's a little more common and relevant is just our historical special here. Oftentimes what will happen is that people, small businesses work so hard to stay in business and do what they do best. And it can be hard enough just to make your pizzas and your coffee and sell your vape and run your martial arts studios and all of that. And we've experienced an increased, for the past couple of years, increased desire for, hey, it's January, February, March. What can you do for me for 2019? And so we offer 50% discounts across the board, not just Clover, to transfer all of your QuickBooks sales for the entire calendar year. That's proven to be rather popular in the grand scheme of things. Additionally, things being as they are today, it can be challenging to offer refunds within the Clover context for those of you who are intimate with their billing system. So we can't just go say, hey, here's your next 3 months for free. What we can do is give more free historical to do what we can as members of the ecosystem for everyone in the ecosystem. I think I SP'd another relevant question regarding setup fees. There are no setup fees. So just like it's kind of included with support, is part of support. We do not punish you for having lots of locations. There's just no fee for that.
Okay, fantastic. And so I want to go ahead and get the poll up. Heather, can you launch that? And then
do that.
pass the presenter roll back over, I'm thinking is what we'll do during the poll.
Sure.
And then, Stephen, there was a question about multi-sales tax that was in the chat. I don't know if you want to speak to that. And there might need to be a little bit of an elaboration on exactly what the question is. Are you talking about, can you have multi-sales tax in oh good golly, inside of Clover, or are you talking about, can you export those into QuickBooks? Because then of course then it would just be in QuickBooks and you would do what you wanted to with it. So you might want to elaborate just a little bit what your question was. And then let's see, is our poll back? How are we doing, Heather?
Just about there. Do you want me to go ahead and close it out?
No, go ahead.
Count people down. 5.
There's a lot of interest, so.
4, 3, 2, and 1. I'll go ahead and end that.
Fantastic, thank you. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and say that I am very glad. Of course, whenever I have something that's been useful in my world, then it makes me very happy to share it. So I'm very happy that this is one of those things that's like I said in the very beginning, you get to put it in your accountant toolbox and say, even though there were some people who were saying, all right, I'm not using Clover now. Well, now you know that you've got a solution. So that's kind of the thing, is whenever you go, I need an end-to-end solution, well, now you know what that looks like. And so now you know you've got a suite of products to be able to help you for if this scenario happens. Or if you've got a Clover client and you've been wondering, how the heck do I get this into QuickBooks? Now you've got your solution. So you've got all of the contact information here. And then if you want to put additional questions in chat, you can continue to do so. But this is also Heather and I's favorite time to be able to share with you some things that we have found over the last week. So some high-tech stuff that's been going on. So Stephen, thank you for that really nice demo and explanation of CommerceSync.
Thank you as well. And thank you everyone for attending and all of your questions. Much appreciated.
They were great questions. Good questions. So while everybody's stuck at home, my son came up to me and said, hey mom, look at this cool thing I found. And I was like, okay, show me. So it's all of these really fun AI experiments. It's on Google. You can go and you can search it. There's tons of them. So you can load up the website. It's right down here. And whenever you go and you launch it, the things that you can do on that website are all kinds of experiments where you can go through and do things like activity bubbles on your phone. So how much phone usage do you have? Well, it was just kind of fun to see during the day, how many of these little bubbles did you rack up? And they racked up fast. So more bubbles, bigger bubbles means more activity in that particular thing that you're doing. So there's a little link to that little activity bubble. So these are ideas that people like you and I have, and they're like, I want to try out this idea. And so you can post your ideas on this website and you can see, is it successful? Are people liking it? Do people like this idea? Another one is my story time. So you can record yourself telling a story and then you can share it anywhere. So you've got this whole world to be able to connect with, and it's your voice away from home, away from your loved ones, where you can read a story to your people. I think that one's really cool. And then another one, oh my gosh, let me just tell you a couple more of these and you'll be singing Freddie Mercury and you'll be thinking you're Queen too. It happened. It happened in my kitchen. And so we all had to do the Freddy test and to see just how good we were. Not so great, I'm going to tell you. But you can go out and you can search all of these Google experiments, and you can come over here and you can look at arts and culture if you want to. You can just look at the AI experiments. You can look at Chrome experiments, and you can just search, go through. There's tons and tons and tons. Oh, there's that one right there. Lots of things that you can do. There's all kinds of things from your phone, things that you can do, drawing, listening to, vocabulary, all kinds of interesting ideas that people have came up with. And then I also want to share, these recordings are always on our website. And so today there's been several people who have asked about the slides. All of these will be available tomorrow on our website, so you can watch the recording. You'll have access to be able to download the slides. And so all of our past episodes are also there as well. And make sure that you're following us on Facebook and Twitter and staying connected with our peeps. So we love to be able to hear from you and join into our community.
And join our Facebook group. We have a great Facebook group. We're getting more and more members every single week. So we'd love to see you there. And what's kind of different about our Facebook group is we invite our app friends in too. So most, if not all of the app developers that have been on Appiar are in that group. So if you have a question, it's a place where you can reach out and maybe get an answer.
Very true. And then you want to share about our upcoming episode?
Yes, so on April 28th, we have an ADP special announcement. We're really excited. They have chosen the Appy Hour to be the premier webcast to announce this announcement. So really excited to have you guys on that particular episode. Then on May 12th, we're going to learn about how to supercharge your accounts payable process and learn about AI. So we have Todd Robinson coming on the show, and he's going to be sharing his depth of knowledge of the accounting industry and also where artificial intelligence, what its role in our industry is. Then on May 26th, we're going to have our friend Matthew Fulton on. And then on June 9th, we have Practice Ignition panel discussion, which will be amazing. And then we have AR Collect coming on June 16th. So we have a lot of great episodes lined up. That's really just through the second quarter. We have some other great episodes coming up in our third quarter. So we'll be adding those as well too.
And the thing that we want to say very much is that, Stephen, we're very, very thankful that you're here. You picked an amazing cocktail too. Lots of history. There's lots of history with Commerce Sync to QuickBooks. So well done, and thank you.
Much appreciated as well, Liz.
And we also have news with Right Networks that we're going to be doing 3 extra episodes where we're going to be talking about, there was so much interest in our Right Networks episode that we are going to go ahead and do a thing that we've never done before. It's going to be an educational platform that's going to actually take you through a series of 3 different episodes of how to get started and get connected to, then how to connect users and your clients, train them as well as yourself on how to use Right Networks for your daily activity. And then lastly, troubleshooting and tips. So all of those are going to be on Tuesdays at our normally scheduled time on the next following 3 Tuesdays coming up. So we just want to say thank you to everybody. And I'm going to come back here and just land on your page right there.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Stephen. This was amazing.
And thanks, everyone.
I certainly learned a ton.
That is my favorite thing to do, is to walk away with those little nuggets.
Yes.
Well, everybody, we hope that you are staying in your comfy pants and you're like me. I got my pretty shoes with me, but they're not on my feet. It doesn't mean I didn't get them out. So we can always have fun and get together. So many, many more times that we'll be seeing you around. Make sure that you drop us a note and reach out for any type of support. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.